Palestinian Islamic resistance movement Hamas has officially confirmed the death of its leader Yahya Sinwar, who was killed in combat fighting Israeli forces in Gaza. In Peru, criminals attacked students brutally at the National University of San Marcos amid a protest in defense of the university's autonomy. And Joe Biden, the President of the United States, arrived on Friday to Berlin to hold bilateral meetings with German Foreign Affairs Minister Olaf Scholz. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. The Palestinian Islamic resistance movement Hamas has officially confirmed the death of its leader Yahya Sinwar, who was killed in combat fighting Israeli forces in Gaza. On Thursday, Israeli authorities announced that the Hamas leader had been killed in a battle that ensured that soldiers were searching an area in southern Gaza. Drone footage released by the military showed Sinwar badly wounded inside a bombed building, still managing to fight off the Zionist regime attack. In this context, on Friday, the Hamas senior leader Khalid al-Hayya confirmed the death, stressing that Sinwar battled and confronted, weapon in hand, the Israeli army until the last moment of his life at the forefront of the ranks. Hayya also stated Hamas conditions regarding truce negotiations will not change after the martyrdom of its leader.
We mourn the great leader, the martyred brother, Yahya Sinwar, Abu Ibrahim. Hamas political bureau chief and commander of the Al-Aqsa flood battle. The martyrdom of the brother leader Yahya Sinwar, and all the leaders and symbols of the movement, who preceded him on the path of dignity and martyrdom, and the project of liberation and return, will only build our movement and resistance in strength and determination, to continue on their path and honor their blood and sacrifices.
Meanwhile, in Israel, genocidal forces announced on Thursday that the Lebanese Islamic resistance movement has shot to death 5 Israeli military belonging to the elite Golani group. According to local media briefings, the Golani members entered a construction that had identified as safe, but by the time they went into the building, Hezbollah fighters opened fire on them from a very close distance. This attack by the Lebanese resistance is a forceful response to the Israeli shelling on the Lebanese people. And meanwhile, in Palestine, Israeli forces committed a new massacre in the Jabalia refugee camp in the northern Gaza Strip. Israel bombarded with 2 missiles the Abu Hussein school while food was being distributed to the displaced in this center. In this sense, medical sources reported preliminary the death of at least 28 people, most of them children, while dozens of Palestinians were wounded. On the other hand, Gazan authorities qualified the attack as a massacre, assuring in a statement that Israeli forces were aware that the school saved thousands of women and children displaced by the shelling of civilian neighborhoods. The authorities also added that this massacre raises to 192 the number of shelters and displacement centers bombed by the Israeli occupation. And we go now to other topics. In Brazil, an investigation reveals that the use of U.S. anti-corruption law was an instrument of geopolitical dispute, especially against companies based in the global south. More details in the following report.
The U.S. Department of Justice announced an investigation against the Swedish aircraft manufacturer Saab in connection with a contract with the Brazilian government in 2014, when Dilma Rousseff, The current president of the new BRICS Development Bank was president of the country. The agreement resulted in the purchase of 36 Swedish Gripen fighter jets for $4.5 billion, which today are the property of the Brazilian Air Force. President Lula considered the action to be part of a hegemonist posture of the United States.
Comrade Dilma bought an airplane that was more economical, cheaper, and the maintenance cost less. It is a plane of a group of countries. It is Swedish with the participation of England and other countries. I sincerely believe that the request for information from the United States is an interference by the United States in something from another country.
An investigation by Arthur Pinheiro de Azevedo Bonzado shows that the U.S. applies lighter fines to U.S. companies accused of committing corruption offenses in a strategy to boost U.S. industry and destabilize competing markets by attacking up-and-coming economies.
A more recent cutback would be applied more rigorously in the countries of the Global South, especially in the BRICS, because of the geopolitical issue. The BRICS are a coalition that is making a certain stand against U.S. hegemony, mainly in the institutions of Bretton Woods and the World Bank.
The thesis reveals that with the help of Lava Jato, Brazilian companies paid the largest fines in the history of the U.S. anti-corruption law, the FCPA. At the top of the list of countries targeted by the U.S. legal actions are China, Brazil, and India, countries that make up the BRICS.
The Brazilian case is striking because of the amount of the fines, but there are many Chinese companies that are affected. Even China has been expressing in its diplomatic documents that it perceives the nature of competition control based on the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the U.S. anti-corruption law. It would be a geopolitical strategy. Although there is corruption of these companies as a structural phenomenon of capitalism, especially when we are talking about large conglomerates, but there is a certain selectivity in the sense of instrumentalizing corruption to harm certain companies.
On October 22nd, Brazil will participate in the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. A month later, it will host the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro, where announcements are expected on the country's entry into the Chinese global logistics circuit called the Belt and Road.
Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Peru, criminals have attacked students brutally at the National University of San Marcos amid a protest in defense of the university's autonomy. Several demonstrators have been injured after the violent repression. The students' leaders denounced that they have been prevented from assisting the wounded. Moreover, they confirmed that some of the university's internal security personnel had been carrying stones and spray paint from early on, allegedly with the intention of generating violence to force police officers to meddle in, who ended up protecting the aggressors and not the victims. In Colombia, the Congress reopened the debate on the labor reform as the opposition party succeeded in eliminating articles considered key, especially for the farmers. Let's see the details with our correspondent Hernán Tobar.
The opposition sectors in the Colombian Congress, represented by the right-wing parties Democratic Center and Radical Change, plus some members of the Green and traditional parties, were happy and celebrated the majority vote they obtained to eliminate key articles of the labor reform that guarantees decent conditions for farmers. Some congressmen expressed their rejection of this attitude and the setback for Colombian farmers and their labor rights.
It was a totally petty decision. There was a difference of 7 votes. By 7 votes, we lost so that the farmers could have the guarantee of an agricultural contract for a decent agricultural day's wage and the right to rural housing. We have lost this struggle that we have been fighting for a long time.
This is the feudal thinking of those who want to keep rural workers in subhuman conditions in order to protect the interests of large landowners and large industrialists who have taken advantage of the land and agricultural labor in our country.
The articles eliminated were related to the guarantee of social benefits and an employment contract backed by a legal minimum wage, in addition to having decent conditions for their daily performance. The peasant organizations have already assured that they will resort to international bodies to ensure and respect these rights that the opposition sectors and large associated unions want to disregard.
We are going to denounce this to the International Labor Organization because it is really an alarming situation in the Colombian case. The levels of poverty in the countryside and this denial of these 3 fundamental rights of the 3 Articles 31, 32, 33 will further aggravate the life situations of rural workers.
In the street, the opinion of citizens does not differ with respect to the rejection generated by the actions of the opposition in the Congress, considering that the most vulnerable populations of the country are being turned away.
Young people are leaving the countryside because there are no guarantees, and now that a guarantee was sought with this reform, there was none. So there will be migration of young people to the cities, and we will have more criminality. We must base the right to work, which is an inalienable right at international level.
Despite this context, the reform finally managed to advance in the second debate in the House of Representatives, although 2 more debates are still pending in the Senate. For their part, the congressmen who are the rapporteurs hope that these points can be taken up again in the discussion and keep them alive for the remainder of the Colombian legislature.
teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
In Ecuador, a Turkish ship brings hydroelectric power to the country in the midst of an electricity crisis. The Turkish-owned Emre Bey ship has docked at a port in the southwestern Ecuador in Guayaquil as the South American country continues to suffer blackouts amid a severe drought that has affected its hydroelectric power plants. The 110-megawatt plant commissioned by the government of President Daniel Noboa to relieve the population affected by power outages will supply energy to 500,000 Ecuadorian families, according to the Turkish company Power Ship.
Well, this ship provides energy for about 500,000 Ecuadorian families. The function of this 110-megawatt plant is to take fuel oil, a type of fuel, and convert it into electrical energy through 6 internal combustion engines, each generating 17.5 megawatts.
And in Panama, popular organizations participated in a march to the presidency of the Republic in rejection of the privatization of the state Social Security Fund. During the mobilization, the organizations and the National Confederation of Independent Unity, CONUSI, presented their demands, among which is the return to the solidarity system for the payment of pensions. The protesters also rejected the government's libertarian plan, which seeks to increase the retirement age and the number of quotas to favor the retirement and pension fund administration. In addition, the workers demanded a return to the solidarity system and rejected parametric measures promoted by the government that seek to transfer all pensions to individual accounts.
Rechazamos que nosotros, el pueblo, We refuse to accept that we, the people, we, the workers, have to pay more so that the Social Security Fund can continue to function. But where are the entrepreneurs? We have not heard from them. They talk about negotiations, but it's a negotiation between them, where they don't even take into account what the workers want.
In Cuba, on Thursday, Prime Minister Manuel Marrero offered statements regarding the energy crisis the Caribbean country is facing. This way, the minister explained the causes of the records of deficit in the energy supply, mainly due to the lack of fuel and the obsolete technologies of the country's thermoelectric power plants. The high official assured the government is searching for solutions on a daily basis to reduce the harmful effects of the outages and stressed that energy employees are working tirelessly with several actions being taken, including the purchase of new technologies and raw materials for the restoration of the damaged power plants. Furthermore, Marrero urged Cubans to save energy and remain united through these difficult times.
We have analyzed everything that is going to be done in order to improve living conditions, activities, and offers to the population for the end of the year. So we are developing this whole process. We are making strong exchanges. It is not a control, but it is a search for solutions in the field. And this closes the circuit of all previous processes, as is the case that our first Secretary of State has been developing extraordinary plenary sessions of the provincial committees of the party where they have analyzed all these problems, but from the political point of view.
And we have a cycle short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you will be able to re-watch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Joe Biden, President of the United States, arrived on Friday to Berlin to hold bilateral meetings with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Biden will carry as well a four-way meeting that will include French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The main topics of the encounter would be the support to Ukraine in the current conflict and also the Middle East situation. The tenant of the White House arrived in Germany a week later due to the hurricane that hit the south of his country. In this context, it is stated by local media that the German Chancellor has showed interest in a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin to talk about a peace agreement. And a new report issued by the United Nations on Thursday says that more than 1 billion people live in acute poverty in the world today. According to the UN Development Programme report, countries at war have higher levels of deprivation across all indicators of the multidimensional poverty, with more severe disparities in nutrition, access to electricity, and access to water and sanitation. On the other hand, the study showed that some 584 million people under 18 were experiencing extreme poverty, accounting for 27.9% of children worldwide, compared to 13.5% of adults. Moreover, child mortality in conflict settings was 8% compared to the 1.1% in peaceful countries. And the European Union summit opened Thursday in Brussels with an agenda seeking to make the bloc a more hostile destination for migrants and asylum seekers. The 27 European leaders looked at plans to speed up initiatives to get unwanted migrants out of the bloc and process asylum applications far outside their borders. In contrast to the 2015 debate, when the European Union was also faced with a migration crisis and the bloc was confident to manage the situation, now EU leaders want to manage and seal off their borders even more tightly. Poland has said recently it wants to temporarily suspend the right to asylum, while Italy has opened 2 centers to process asylum seekers outside its borders in Albania. On the other hand, Germany has reinstated border controls. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.